The investigator promised she was doing right, despite her fear. He assured her again. Suddenly, poor, innocent Deborah Leanne found herself tangled in a very dark mess. You and I are going to unpack how a simple Little Caesars pizza run led to a bloody trunk. Was she innocent? Detectives saw right through her whimpering. They warned her there was absolutely no use sitting there telling a damn lie when they already knew the actual truth. They urged her to be honest and help herself. She had an opportunity to confess, but she chose to sit right there and keep lying. This is the chilling interrogation of Deborah Leanne Burge. Regarding her involvement in the death of Harvey Ray Smith, the detective started by gathering basic information, simply asking the suspect to state her full legal name. She answered Deborah Leanne Burge, born in 7990. Then came the question of her exact home address. She stumbled through Highway 97 in Molino, Florida, nervously joking that she only remembered it because of all the sevens. The detective dryly agreed it was indeed many sevens. He asked if she owned a cell phone, but she firmly denied having one at all. She insisted she only used her dad's phone, quickly offering the digits 77634. The investigator politely thanked her for coming down today. He noted it was a Sunday, asking how exactly she managed to find a ride down to the station. She nervously rambled about calling to check on her dad that morning, only to learn she was being actively investigated for a homicide case. She desperately insisted to the cops that she never gets into any sort of trouble. Right. The detective kept his tone calm and steady, simply reminding her once again that he appreciated her showing up. He clearly assured her she was completely free to leave the room anytime. Coming in voluntarily meant a lot to them, but she quickly admitted to being incredibly nervous about this entire terrifying murder investigation. He promised there was zero reason to worry. Then he casually pivoted, asking what specific phone number she had used to call her dad. She mentioned a friend named Jean. He quickly asked if she actually knew Jean's number. Oddly enough, she didn't even know Jean's last name. She quietly rattled off his phone number. The detective pressed further, asking where exactly she was when using that phone. She claimed she was hanging out over at his house in Pace, Florida. He asked if she happened to know the exact street. She awkwardly admitted it was in town, but couldn't recall the specific street name anywhere. She quickly added that the police were more than welcome to give her friend a call if they really needed to speak. Let's evaluate the facts together. The detective decided to shift gears entirely, asking her to back up the timeline straight to Thursday. He asked what happened that Thursday. She casually claimed they had basically just sat around the house doing nothing all day. Who exactly was we? Just her and Zach Greer. He then asked about her exact connection with Zach. She explained they were old friends who recently reconnected right after he got out of jail. He had randomly asked to crash at her house for an entire week, which she freely admitted felt like a pretty weird arrangement from the start. Did she have a number for him? She claimed she didn't. In fact, she swore she hadn't seen him since Friday, when he completely abandoned her and her kids at a random hotel room. Apparently, he had suddenly left with some random guy she had never even laid eyes on in her entire life. The detective slowed things down. He wanted to focus strictly on that Thursday afternoon she spent sitting at the house. She repeated they simply hung out all day, claiming there wasn't really much else anyone could do out in that rural area. Did they go anywhere at all that afternoon or night? She eventually recalled that his friend finally came to pick them both up around 1 a.m. The detective nodded. She mentioned they had picked her dad up from work earlier that evening. During that entire drive, she noticed Zach had been glued to his phone the whole time they were out. When they finally got back home, the friend they actually planned to hang out with completely ignored all their calls. Who was that mystery guy? You and I are about to discover she didn't even know his real name. Let's review the tape. She insisted the guy's name was just G, the only detail she had. Just G. She admitted to the detective she felt scatterbrained. The detective kept it calm, promising they'd piece it together. He asked if a friend had picked them up. She confirmed it, saying they had been trying to reach him all day long without any luck. She blamed her phone, claiming she couldn't get a signal unless she walked all the way down to the very end of her street. The investigator pressed her on who exactly picked them up. She said it was G. The detective confirmed G was a black man. He then shifted to a Thursday pizza meal. She confirmed the pizza, saying they grabbed it on their drive back from the town of Pace. They ate in the vehicle. The detective asked who was there. She listed herself, her parents, her 2 young daughters, and a man named Zach. The investigator directly asked about the fathers of her girls. Aaron Strickland fathered the toddler, and Lee Sutton was the infant's dad. He then asked if they saw or spoke to anyone while eating the pizza. She admitted she saw a man named Ray Smith. Asked about the chat, she claimed it meant nothing. She said they just discussed his daughter. They were old friends, but the daughter had taken a dark turn and ended up getting shipped off to a rehab clinic. The detective nailed down the location of Little Caesars in Pace, asking if it sat right on Highway 90. She nodded, placing it beside Dixie. The detective summarized her story about the casual daughter chat. She swore nothing else was said. The detective's tone then shifted, issuing a very stern warning. This was crucial. He noted her scatterbrained excuse, but stressed that every single detail spoke of Ort, and tiny memory of the event was absolutely vital to the progress of the police investigation. He laid down his first strict rule whenever he asked a question. She needed to be completely honest. His second major rule was that she couldn't just offer half the story. She tried to interrupt, but the detective held his ground, demanding she let him finish his thought. He needed absolute certainty that she understood his instructions completely. He warned her that 2 things would get her in deep trouble: telling a direct lie or trying to blow smoke and manipulate the ongoing interview. He made it crystal clear that neither option was acceptable. She eagerly agreed to the terms, promising absolute honesty moving forward. No details would be left out today. He ensured she was tracking him. She confirmed she was totally on board. He then showed her something, assuming she knew the guy. She quickly identified the person as Gray. Here's where the case turns. The detective bluntly stated the man was dead, promising to address the death shortly. He circled back, demanding to know what was discussed inside Little Caesars. She repeated it was just about his daughter, someone she'd known forever. Since the girl was stuck in rehab, she claimed she merely asked about her progress, when she might return home, and other casual updates like that. The investigator then asked if she had history chatting with this man. She quietly nodded. She explained he'd occasionally dial her parents' phones to reach her. It wasn't frequent at all, maybe once or twice a month at most. Just a rare check-in. She claimed they hadn't seen each other in ages. The detective asked if they were intimate. She denied it. He then asked when they spoke next. Following the encounter at the pizza place, she vaguely recalled him calling her mom's phone later. Unable to pinpoint the exact time due to the distraction of feeding the kids in the vehicle, he verified the exact phone number. She claimed he called while they traveled. Now, let's see where her story goes. The detective sharply asked where they were heading. The tape starts rolling. You and I need to watch her story closely. She claims right after they spoke at Little Caesars, they left. 20 minutes passed. The caller wanted to check if she was still in Pace, fully aware that she didn't actually live anywhere near that specific town. She actually lived in Molino. She claims he was simply checking if she was still hanging out around town, but she clearly told him no. She really wasn't. She stated she stayed in Molino with her kids and parents. The detective then quickly asks if they spoke anymore after that. She firmly denies talking to him on the phone ever again. When asked about texting, she stumbles. The detective holds up a hand, stopping her right there to explain how this interrogation actually works. He cuts straight through her weak excuses. He doesn't just think he knows. He lays out her clear options. Help yourself. Tell the absolute truth. And let law enforcement get this entire messy situation straightened out. He warns her there is zero use sitting there telling a damn lie when he holds the evidence. He urges her to confess. He points out her golden opportunity to help herself. Baffled that she is deliberately choosing to sit in that rigid chair and lie, he urges her to take this chance, speak the real story, and finally get the dark truth off her heavy chest. She cries about losing her children. He shoots back that sitting in this room and lying is exactly what will get her into severe trouble. He pushes her to accept responsibility. she has a chance to stand up and confess that a fatal mistake just happened. He tells her this is her only moment to fix things. That is precisely why they brought her in quietly and acted so reasonably. They wanted to speak with her face to face so she could finally break down and give them the genuine truth. He promises the truth is the absolute only thing that will grant her peace today. Carrying that heavy guilt on her guilty conscience will silently destroy her from the inside out. He offers to start the interview completely over so they can get it right. He wants every hidden secret dumped on the table. He hands her the opportunity, demanding the real story. He asks her directly if that sounds like a fair deal. He tells her to dry her tears, knowing she's been a total wreck for the past few days. He notes she hasn't slept in a week. She tearfully admits she couldn't sleep. She panics about getting in trouble. He calmly redirects her anxiety, saying they are currently heading down the wrong path and she needs to listen. Here is where you and I see a classic pivot. He leverages her children, telling her they need to ensure she remains their present mother. He pushes again for total honesty, calling it the only viable path. He declares they are starting over from the beginning. He asks if she is truly ready to move forward, telling her to wipe those bitter tears away right now. He promises she will feel better once this ends. Then, he pivots back what actually happened at Little Caesars. She claims the older man kept staring down her shirt, making highly inappropriate comments about her body and making her skin crawl. The detective says to slow down. She adds that whenever the man called, he was relentlessly hitting on her. His aggressive advances always made her feel deeply uncomfortable. She explains she actively avoided hanging out with him because she absolutely hated feeling so intensely awkward and physically unsafe in his presence. After all, this man was her best friend's father. The entire twisted dynamic was incredibly weird and crossed far too many personal boundaries. She claims she left the pizza shop. Then, just like before, he called her. While driving down the road, he called asking to hang out, but she firmly shut him down. She then repeated his creepy comments to Zach, which predictably sent Zach into a sudden, toxic, jealous fit of blind rage. According to her, Zach then demanded she invite the man back to their house. The stunned detective asks her to repeat that. She confirms that Zach actually wanted the guy to come hang out. So, he arrived. She claims they were all sitting in his parked car together before she walked inside to check on her awake children, ultimately deciding to just lock herself indoors safely with them. She insists her memory goes completely blank right after that moment. She claims the story ends there. But you and I know better. The detective quickly demands to know what she saw upon stepping back outside. She stammers, stalling for more time. She claims she frantically texted Zach to come outside and force Ray to leave. She alleges Ray had previously taken her shopping and repeatedly tried shoving his hands down her pants. Leaving her completely terrified, the detective sharply asks where Zach was during this. She admits Zach was sitting quietly, right in the backseat. She naturally assumes he witnessed the entire inappropriate encounter unfold, which only further fueled his violently boiling rage. She repeats that once she retreated indoors, she frantically texted Zach, begging him to come back inside too. After that, she swears she has absolutely no clue what unfolded. He refuses to let up. What exactly happened outside? You and I are diving into this tape today. The detective pressed for honesty, while she begged to see her kids. When pressed on what happened next, she admitted Zach's real plan. He intended to rob Ray of absolutely everything. The investigator asked if the victim even had cash. She claimed she had no idea what he was holding. She claimed Zach confessed the dark plot to her, trying to stop it. She quickly texted Ray, warning him to leave. According to her, Ray drove away while Zach followed on foot. After that, she swore she lost track completely. She frantically repeated that she had no clue what went down on that dark stretch of road. Nothing. What unfolded next? She frantically dialed Ray's number, but got dead silence. Worried, she started walking toward the road's end. As she reached the road, someone suddenly came sprinting toward her through the darkness. It was Zach, right there. Zach confessed to the bloody murder. She froze in sheer terror, totally paralyzed and unsure what to do. She swore to the detective she would never have allowed a dangerous killer near her children if she had known the horrible truth. She feared he might hurt them or drag her into chaos. Her kids were everything. With both fathers locked away in prison, she was the only parent they had left. She claimed total ignorance, completely unaware he was on probation or hiding from active arrest warrants. She vehemently denied any involvement in the crime, repeating that Zach alone confessed to the killing. The detective pushed for the next crucial detail. Zach ordered her to walk down the road. When they arrived, absolute panic set in. The reason for her panic was gruesome. Ray was lying dead right there on the dirt. The detective leaned in, asking if she saw exactly how the brutal murder actually happened. She broke down, frantically repeating that she didn't see anything and had absolutely no idea how the violent crime occurred. What followed was chilling. Zach shoved the lifeless body into the vehicle, then forced her to take the steering wheel. The detective immediately pumped the brakes, telling her to take a deep breath and clarify what she meant by the back of the car. She confirmed it was Ray's own car. The investigator asked if the body was stuffed into the trunk. He wanted to know if she assisted with the body, but she firmly denied touching him. Zach did it all. She tearfully pleaded that she wasn't a terrible person. The investigator calmly reassured her otherwise. "Stick with me. This tactic is fascinating." The investigator explained they didn't kick her front door down like a raid because they genuinely believed she wasn't the mastermind, but just a mother helplessly trapped in a terribly messed up situation. Understood. He assured her she was just trapped in a nightmare, and they were simply trying to make things right again. So what happened next? She revealed that Zach ordered her to drive the getaway car toward Pensacola. He forced her to quickly load up her kids before fleeing. They drove the victim's car straight to Pensacola. Once there, Zach made her walk into a Motel 6 and rent a room. The very next morning, they woke up in the motel, and Zach called her friend, Lauren Rockwell, to come pick them up. Lauren drove the tense group down the highway to another spot called the Queen Mary. They booked another room to hide out in, but checkout time was strictly 11 a.m. the very next morning. Running completely out of options, she reached out to a guy named Gene, explaining she had absolutely nowhere left to hide. She desperately asked if they could crash with him, and Gene quickly agreed to take them in. Soon after, Gene showed up at the motel room along with an unnamed friend of his, ready to pick her and the kids up. Strangely, Zach had vanished. She and Gene were just waiting there while some loud folks caused a disturbance down the hallway. The detective quickly interrupted, asking exactly where this Gene lived down in Florida. She confirmed it was the guy from earlier. He needed Lauren's number. She gave 503-5131. She added Lauren worked at the Sonic Drive-In. Returning to the timeline, she explained Gene came for the kids, and Zach was originally supposed to ride with them. Zach claimed he was just walking down the hall. Meanwhile, Gene announced he was ready to leave. She called Lauren's phone because Zach was supposed to catch a ride with her later on. When she dialed to see if Lauren arrived, Zach answered the line himself and bluntly announced he was gone. The killer had completely abandoned her and her children inside that cheap hotel room, disappearing into thin air. "We all see the betrayal," the detective agreed, then asked how she finally got home today. "Today," she echoed, confused. "Today, you and I are going to explore a chilling interrogation together." Leanne told the detective she called her parents, but her dad refused to talk by phone, insisting he just pick her up. The detective paused the questioning, deciding to back up the timeline a bit. He asked what she wore the night of the crime out by the road. Leanne admitted her clothes were already sitting in the washing machine. Zach had forced her to shove all the evidence into the washing machine. If she refused to listen, he threatened she would be staring at the exact same prison walls. She claimed he warned they would both end up behind thick cement walls. Pressing further, the investigator asked exactly what she was wearing. Leanne vaguely recalled having a jacket on, but couldn't seem to remember much else. Seeing her panic, the detective gently told her to calm down. He asked if she went by Deborah or Leanne. She chose Leanne. The detective looked right at her, reassuring her that she was doing the right thing. He acknowledged she was terrified but praised her honesty. He promised they would work through it together. As long as she slowed her breathing, they needed to take things step by step and simply answer a few more routine questions. He reminded her she didn't murder the boy. She was simply confirming who actually did it, asking her to help make the situation right. The detective circled back to exactly what she was wearing the night of the crime. Leanne recalled wearing a jacket that definitely had some bright patches of pink on it. She honestly couldn't remember if she had pants or shorts on. The detective assured her that was completely fine and kept moving forward. He then asked what Zach wore. Leanne said Zach had on her ex-boyfriend's jacket and shoes. She described a black jacket and a pair of dark shoes that didn't even belong to him in the first place. The investigator carefully asked if she knew exactly where Zach had put them. He wanted to know exactly what kind of black jacket it was. He asked if it was leather. She described it as a heavy work jacket instead, which the detective noted down. Underneath it all, she thought he might have been wearing some kind of blue shirt. Though her memory was hazy, she wasn't sure if her mom did the laundry yet. The dirty clothes could still be sitting inside the machine waiting to be found. Zach had ordered her to throw everything into the washing machine immediately. Completely terrified, she just didn't know what else she could possibly do. She was just following his orders. She wasn't used to dealing with crazy, high-stakes situations like that. The detective then asked about their specific conversation while they were driving up to the hotel. "Let's look at this closely together." Zach told her she better listen, blaming her too. He threatened that if anything happened, they would both end up locked away in jail, and she would be separated from her precious children forever. The investigator pointed out what Zach did. He explained that Zach forced her into a massive nightmare and was actively trying to make her feel responsible, but he assured her she wasn't actually responsible for his terrible actions. She cried out that the victim was her best friend's father. She told the detective she would never want a monster to hurt her own dad. The detective agreed, saying what Zach did to her simply wasn't fair either. He committed this horrible crime and then completely abandoned her to face it. Acknowledging that betrayal, the detective gently shifted focus, telling her they just had a couple more questions to work through before they finished. He asked about the moment she mentioned earlier, when Ray took them on a quick drive. She confirmed it was the Tom Thumb convenience store located at the end of the road. It was at the corner of 29 and 97, right where her mother worked. The detective noted that Zach was sitting in the back seat. Ray apparently had a cell phone. Zach grabbed a laptop and a cell phone from inside the car and chucked them right out the window while they were speeding down the road. She recalled it happening somewhere down Highway 29, not very far from Tom Thumb. Zach had shoved all the hidden contents of his wallet into a small cigarette pack for her. He had actually forced her to throw that pack out the window. The investigator verified the evidence was tossed near Tom Thumb on 29. He asked if it went out the driver's side. She swore she never even touched it. Stick with me here. We finally learn it flew out the passenger side. Picture this interrogation room. The detective immediately zeroes in on the missing cash. When pressed for an exact number, she remembered spotting some $100 bills, but she swore the man left her without a dime. She made it perfectly clear to the investigator. When he vanished, she got nothing. The detective pivoted, asking if she saw any stolen electronics like an iPod. She strongly denied it. The investigator shifted tactics, questioning if she had a romantic relationship with Ray. She claimed Ray constantly flirted with her. She even quoted him saying, "I left my daughter and my girlfriend sleep to come see you." She told the detective she'd brushed off his advances. She reminded the victim she was only 22, turning 23 that July. She called the situation incredibly creepy. He was her friend's dad. The questioning took a dark turn. The detective wanted to know if she and Zach had to empty the trunk before hiding Ray inside. She grew defensive, swearing she never touched anything inside the trunk, pushed on whether Zach removed items. She vaguely recalled spotting what looked like a bulky propane tank. She hesitated while recounting the memory, ultimately placing the propane bottle somewhere near the very back of the vehicle. She insisted that was all she noticed in the back. Apparently, Zach had ordered her to stay far away from that specific area. According to her, Zach explicitly forbade her from looking around the car's trunk. When the detective pressed her for a timeline, She claimed she saw the bottle while waking her children. Asked for the exact location, she deflected, complaining about dragging her children through this. You and I can spot the interrogation tactic here. The detective played the sympathizer, validating how unfairly she'd been treated. He called her mom to build trust, promising they just wanted to work through the mess. Then, he shifted the line of questioning. The investigator brought up a jacket and some shoes belonging to her ex-boyfriend. He asked if Zach wore her ex's other clothes. She quickly said no. Questioned about a specific set of coveralls. She confidently denied ever seeing them. She aggressively maintained her ignorance, repeating that she never saw what Zach actually loaded into or pulled out of the trunk. She painted herself as distracted, busy running his errands, grabbing spray bottles, and putting away clothes during the entire ordeal. While he handled the grim task outside, she claimed she was absolutely terrified indoors, panicking because she didn't know what to do. She described feeling totally paralyzed, unsure whether to call her parents or the police. She had never faced a nightmare like this. The investigator then asked if Zach used the yard's water hose. She confirmed he did, using it to completely spray down the car. Did he spray Ray directly? She admitted seeing the open trunk with Zach holding the hose, but he immediately screamed at her to stay far away. Understood. Then came the heaviest question: did Zach shoot Ray? She stumbled through her answer, claiming complete ignorance. She realized she didn't really know Zach after all. The detective quickly pivoted the timeline, asking why she had walked down to the end of the road. He needed her exact location, asking if she meant out by Highway 97. She corrected him. They were at the end of the driveway, right behind an old boat on the property. She clarified that she had been standing right behind that boat. The vehicle was parked there, allegedly because that spot had the best cell reception. Actually, she backtracked, explaining they had to walk much further down the road to find a signal. She claimed she ordered Zach to leave, assuming he just wandered off alone into the nearby woods. As for Ray backing the car up, she insisted Zach kept her completely in the dark. She swore she'd never allow violence around her kids. Confused, the investigator asked about Zach escaping through the woods. He assumed Zach left with Ray, realizing the timeline was flawed. He paused to ask a favor. The narrative was entirely tangled, leaving them both utterly confused. The detective promised to take everything step by step. He ordered her to look at him, acknowledging how incredibly difficult this process was. Let's pause and watch this move. He validated her trauma, then smoothly dragged her back to the timeline. He asked who went into the store. She admitted she was alone. You and I are going to unpack this interrogation tape together. The detective first asks about her route after the store. She claims they pulled directly into her home's driveway. She tells him she went inside to check on her children, noting they were already wide awake. She says she sent a text explaining her kids were waiting. She claims she planned to head back outside and told him to send Zach in. She claims that when Ray left, Zach wandered into the woods. The investigator immediately presses her, asking if Zach ever came back inside. She dodges, saying she tried calling Ray's phone because she had absolutely no clue what was unfolding. When nobody answered, she walked toward the street. That is when Zach supposedly came sprinting up the road, yelling that he desperately needed her down there. The detective abruptly stops her for jumping too far ahead. He plays the sympathetic cop, telling her he completely understands how emotional and incredibly difficult this entire criminal investigation must be for her. She immediately gets defensive, insisting she isn't lying and just wants to tell the investigators the honest truth. He humors her, but firmly demands they back up to the convenience store. He traces her steps back to the house and her kids, asking point blank if Zach came back inside. She firmly denies he ever returned. Then the detective drops a bomb. He asks about her earlier claim that Zach was actively planning a robbery. Suddenly, her memory gets foggy. She claims to be entirely confused. The detective tells her to breathe, pressing her on exactly when this robbery conversation happened. She stalls, blaming her poor memory on the passage of time and severe stress. She claims Zach suddenly decided to rob him out of anger. Right after she complained about inappropriate things Ray had been saying to her, she accuses Ray of making aggressive sexual advances. citing an incident at a local pizza spot and other deeply disturbing comments made prior to that. According to her, he never called just to chat, unless she specifically brought up the topic of his own daughter. She insists he was constantly making unwanted sexual remarks. Constantly. She says these toxic interactions made her deeply uncomfortable, playing the victim card. Let's review the facts together. The detective ignores her deflection and pulls the timeline back to the store run. He asks if this was when she checked the kids, and she confirms going straight inside, right after arriving from the shop. The investigator locks in this crucial detail about her timeline. He asks if this was the moment she stepped back outside and learned about the robbery plot. She fiercely denies ever going back out, insisting she only sent a text demanding that Zach come into the house. Noted. She then admits Zach came inside and confessed his criminal plan. She claims she flatly told him no, arguing that her young children lived right there. The detective clarifies the exact timing. She confirms the confession happened right after the store run. She tries to distance herself, claiming she had absolutely no idea what the two men discussed outside. The detective methodically boxes her in, verifying that she walked inside first. He confirms she checked the kids before Zach ever entered. She repeats her main defense. She claims she ordered Zach not to commit the crime because it was her family's home. He simply asks where Zach went next. Her story fractures. She says she told Ray to leave, then guesses Zach slipped away first, claiming she felt too incredibly uncomfortable to even notice. She insists she stayed hidden indoors, desperately wanting zero involvement in whatever criminal act was happening. The detective pivots to the suspect's escape route, mentioning her father's property and pointing out a specific shed visible directly from the front door. He stares her down, asking if Zach went that way. She agrees. He asks if that route leads straight to the boat. When asked about a trail, she explains it is easy to walk right through because the brush and field grass are kept fairly low. She admits it isn't an official path, but it is entirely cleared out for walking. She notes that if you travel down the street and glance over, the wooden structure is clearly visible from the main road. Right here, the detective suddenly circles back for the ultimate question. He flatly asks if she knows that Zach shot Ray. She coldly replies she didn't hear a single thing. So what do you and I make of this? Asked about a confession, she claims she never asked any questions. Let's unpack this interrogation together. The detective fired off questions. Did you see a gun or knife? She immediately played defense. She swore she didn't hear a sound or see a single thing. She claimed she was too terrified to ask any questions at all. If he could do that to him, what about my kids? She pleaded. The investigator countered, asking how long they'd known each other. She admitted they went back years, noting he was constantly in and out of the prison system. After hanging out just one time, he apparently asked to crash at her place for a week. Amazingly, she simply opened her doors and let the ex-convict move right in. She figured since he had just been released, he likely already had fresh arrest warrants to go right back behind bars anyway. The detective pressed her on the timeline. Did he say he was wanted? She shook her head. According to her, her mother had heard through the neighborhood grapevine about his active arrest warrants. She insisted she would never invite that trouble home. Pivoting, the detective confirmed they drove back to the hotel. He mapped out the escape route driving down Highway 97, then hanging a quick turn onto 29. Exactly. They supposedly passed a Tom Thumb store, and that is when the suspect tossed a laptop and a cell phone right out the passenger window. Next went a cigarette pack stuffed with other stolen items. He handed her a pack crammed with stolen Social Security cards. He ordered her to chuck the evidence out her window, straight onto the driver's side of the dark highway. She panicked, reminding him she didn't even have a valid license, while her young kids were sitting right there in the back seat. She claimed she'd never risk her kids. But when asked about the cards, she confessed she threw the pack out on his strict orders. The detective verified the drop zone around the same area as the dumped laptops. She nodded. He continued mapping the timeline, asking if they had made it down to the older part of town yet. He specifically asked if they'd cruised past the small local restaurant sitting down the hill on the right. She couldn't remember. She claimed she was staring straight ahead, totally silent, absolutely paralyzed by fear during the entire drive. She kept her eyes glued to the road, blindly obeying his every command without asking questions. The investigator just listened. He refocused the interrogation. "You're driving down 29. Tell me your exact route." She stumbled over her words, insisting she barely knew her way around the streets of Pensacola at all. "Let's step back together. Who actually chose that specific hotel?" She pointed straight at him. "Was there a specific motive behind it?" He directed her to the property, forcing her to pull the car straight up to the front lobby. Interestingly, she claimed that the second she walked inside to check in, she clearly spotted the security camera glaring right down at the front desk area. She was positive the lens captured her exiting the vehicle. Then, bizarrely, in the middle of this high-stakes escape, she asked the front desk clerk for a job application and actually filled it out. "You actually filled one out?" She confirmed she did. He asked what happened upon returning to the vehicle. She parked the getaway car exactly where he demanded, over on the side lot. Grabbing her children, she rushed straight into the motel room and supposedly never stepped foot outside again. The detective zeroed in on a crucial detail. Where did the keys go? She claimed total ignorance. She vehemently swore she never pulled the keys from the ignition. She insisted she didn't touch them, except for actually starting the engine. Of course, after that, the keys vanished into thin air. They hid out together all night long. The next morning, the chaotic crew woke up at the crack of dawn, right around 6:30. Exactly. By then, the suspect was completely panicking. He called a girl named Lauren for a quick rescue, and she drove them down to the Queen Mary Motel. As a reward for the ride, he bought this new accomplice a brand new tire for her vehicle. Clearly, he was spending the victim's stolen cash. The detective immediately wanted to know the tire shop's exact location. She vaguely recalled a spot called Jerry's, guessing it was somewhere nearby on Fairfield Drive. He probed if the shop was on the south side of town. She shrugged, playing the naive card about navigating the Pensacola area. He had them driving all throughout the Mayfair neighborhood, a rough area she claimed she completely avoided, so she felt totally lost. Lauren was the one driving her own car, following his orders. The detective caught a discrepancy. "We have to ask ourselves who's really driving this getaway." She claimed he gave the orders, but Lauren had zero problem helping the fugitive escape. Did he confess the crime to her? She denied knowing anything at all. The room grew tense. She explained the bizarre shift in dynamics. This woman had been her close friend, but out of nowhere, her friend and the suspect had suddenly grown uncomfortably close. The night he abandoned her at that hotel, this so-called friend was his getaway ride. She tried desperately calling both of their phones right after he took off. Neither of them answered a single call. The detective quickly interjected, asking for an address. She pointed them toward Mutson Highway. The timeline was muddy sometime between Thursday and Friday. The stress had her completely disoriented. She fumbled through the days, confusing Sunday with Monday. Grounding herself, she confirmed it was Sunday. She recalled an associate named Jean picking her and her children up from the Queen Mary Motel. They retreated straight back to Jean's house. Let's unpack this together. A stranger, Jean's friend, who knew absolutely nothing about Zach, saw her completely break down. Pity took over when he saw her desperate situation. She was at her absolute breaking point. The floodgates opened, and she confessed every grueling detail of what had just happened. The investigator stopped her, needing a name. She identified the Good Samaritan as Marcus. She clarified the connection quickly. Marcus wasn't her friend. He was strictly Jean's buddy. Marcus was apparently disgusted that Zach would abandon a vulnerable mother and her children in such a dangerous, unpredictable scenario. With nowhere else to turn, she relied on this total stranger. Marcus stepped up, trying his best to keep her and her young children safe during the chaotic fallout. Marcus secured them a room at a Motel 6. She described its location tucked behind the university, barely visible from the busy interstate. That night, she, her children, and Marcus all stayed in that cheap room. Her memory momentarily tripped up before she corrected herself. It was actually her friend, Brittany, who had driven them all out to the motel, but there was a glaring logistical problem. Her little girl's car seat was still locked inside Lauren's missing vehicle. The investigator zeroed in on Brittany. She insisted Brittany was completely in the dark about the unfolding crime. Just a familiar face helping out. The detective pressed for Brittany's location, asking if she lived over in Pace. She confirmed Pace was the town. The detective stumbled over his notes, briefly apologizing for interrupting the flow of her frantic story. He needed to get the messy timeline straight. Pausing the interview, he tried to piece together exactly who left with who. He asked her to verify that Marcus secured the hotel room right after leaving Jean's. She clarified that Brittany was the driver who picked everyone up. The detective paused her. She clarified Brittany's last name was Key. Brittany drove her. She confirmed the passenger list herself. Marcus and her 2 young children. Nobody else. The group headed straight to that Motel 6, where Marcus officially paid for their room to safely spend the night. Asked for Marcus's last name, she admitted she had absolutely no idea. Before skipping town, she desperately needed to retrieve her child's car seat from Lauren's vehicle. She had been relentlessly dialing their numbers ever since they ditched her at the hotel. Not a single phone call was ever picked up. Out of options, she texted them, begging for a quick public meetup. She told them it was completely fine if they wanted to cut ties. She didn't even need them to speak to her. All she cared about was getting her children's belongings back. Unsurprisingly, they outright refused to meet her anywhere, face to face. Stick with me, this is where it gets interesting. After she bombarded their phones, they finally replied, claiming the car seat was abandoned on a stranger's curb. She was forced to drive out to a completely random neighborhood just to scrape her baby's safety seat off the cold asphalt. The detective demanded the exact spot. She guessed it was in Pace, off West Spencerfield. She used Pace High School as a landmark, but the detective didn't know the area. She mapped it out from memory down the same street, past a Shell gas station, through a red light, and right behind the local funeral home. The neighborhood's actual name fully escaped her memory. But that was the drop-off point. We're about to uncover what really went down next. The detective paused the interview, grabbing a tablet to map the route. They were allegedly hiding out at some girl named Jennifer's house. The full name was Jennifer Booth. Just as promised, her child's car seat had been left sitting out by the street like common garbage. The investigator asked if her friend Lauren's vehicle was parked nearby. The car was there, but absolutely nobody dared to show their face outside. You and I are stepping into the interrogation room today. The suspect nervously asks for Marcus's number, noting he's at Jean's. She tells detectives they can call him right now if needed. The lead detective confirms her recent stay at the Motel 6. He asks who was there. Just her, Marcus, and her kids. She explains that Marcus fed her kids and made sure they had supplies. She was completely stressed out, so he was just trying to help manage the tense situation as much as possible. The interrogation then shifts to the next morning, which is the current day. Exactly. She says a woman named Brittany picked them up and brought them back to Jean's house. The suspect claims she had been hiding out there ever since the incident. This timeline was roughly an hour and a half to 2 hours before she called the investigator upon arriving home. She repeats she was safely at Jean's. She had just called her father to check in, and that is when he told her something incredibly serious went down. He couldn't discuss the crime over the phone, but he was coming to get her immediately. And he did. He arrived. The investigator checks in, terrified of jail. She cries. The detective calmly offers to bring her some water. She asks if she is going to jail. That is exactly what they are trying to figure out. The detective tries to ground her, insisting that she needs to stop panicking and listen to what is actually important. The absolute priority is finding the killer. He is the main suspect they are desperately trying to track down. She desperately offers to reveal any possible location where he might be hiding, eager to help the police find him. The detective asks if she feels better getting it off her chest. She breathes heavy, begging for just 1 second. He gives her a moment, then prepares to quickly run through a few more crucial details regarding the case. Now watch how the detective pivots. He asks about her walking up to the vehicle at the road's end, right by the boat where the murder occurred. He asks what she was doing while the killer loaded Ray's body. She claims she just stood there in total shock. The investigator then asks if she washed her bloody clothes. She washed them because he ordered her to. Was there blood? Not that she knew, but the car was completely covered in it. He asks if she got in that car to ride back. She says she didn't. Instead, she walked back to the house while he drove. She insists Ray drove it down before the attack. The detective corrects her, focusing entirely on what happened after Ray was killed. Was the victim's body stuffed into the trunk? Yes. Did the bloody vehicle go back to her house? She confirms it did. He then asks how it got there. Zach drove it. The detective asks if Ray was inside or outside the vehicle when the fatal attack actually happened. She claims ignorance. She swears she wasn't down there and didn't ask any questions. None whatsoever. She denies it, admitting only to seeing blood smeared across the car and Ray's lifeless body on the ground. Beside which side of the vehicle, she specifies the driver's side. Was the blood located inside or outside the vehicle? It was absolutely everywhere. It was a complete bloodbath. The detective apologizes for pushing her so hard, acknowledging how incredibly rough this interrogation is. But he presses for details. Was the evidence smeared along the side of the car, or just pooled right by the door? She insists the scene was gruesome. Blood was just scattered all over the place. She had never witnessed anything like it. Was Zach also covered in blood? Yes. She didn't notice his bloody clothes until they reached the end of the driveway. She claims she had no idea what happened until she went down and saw Ray's body lying lifeless on the ground, right as she was, completely terrified, creeping forward in the dark just to figure out what the hell was actually unfolding before her eyes. Where exactly did she see the blood on the killer? On Zach, yes. When he showed his hands under the light at the road's end, she completely panicked. She started freaking out and yelled, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" She felt like she was about to suffer a massive anxiety attack. The whole crime scene was genuinely terrifying. The detective stops her, wanting to back up. He focuses on her statement about walking out to the vehicle and finding Ray's body sprawled on the ground. Exactly where? He clarifies what he means. Where was the victim's body positioned in relation to where the car was parked? She confirms the body lay on the driver's side. What do we make of this? Let's uncover this together. Whenever she walked past, the mangled victim was still making chilling noises. What kind? Was he crying? The investigator needed details, but the witness was trembling. The sound absolutely terrified her. It chilled her to the bone. And what was Zach's reaction when the victim kept making those sounds? Just ignore it. What exactly did Zach do next? Zach shoved the victim into the trunk while he was still vocal. Did those sounds continue during the drive? She tried her hardest to just block the entire nightmare out. Did she hear anything at all? She desperately swore she didn't. The interrogator shifted focus. What was the victim, Ray, wearing when she last saw him? As a matter of fact, as they were finally pulling down the driveway after loading the car to flee to the hotel, she noticed a bright red shirt tossed on the side. Did they stop to pick up that missing shirt? Yes. A red shirt discarded right on the edge of the dirt driveway. It was abandoned right at the exact spot where the brutal crime had just taken place. She remembered asking what it was. Zach stopped the car, stepped out into the dark, and grabbed that bloody shirt, bringing it right back inside with them. She had no idea where it went. Did it go inside the car? It did. The detective mistakenly asked if Ray grabbed it. Before quickly correcting himself, it was Zach who brought the evidence into the vehicle. After that, its location remained a total mystery. Did he return to the house after securing the item? Or were they fleeing for good? They were definitely leaving the crime scene behind. The memory alone made her visibly sick. Zach had forced her to stop the car. He made her hit the brakes. Then, he deliberately dragged his shoes across the heavy blood pooling on the ground. He dragged his feet through it, frantically kicking loose dirt over the massive crimson stain, trying his hardest to completely conceal the horrifying murder scene. He kept promising her everything would be fine. They were out in the middle of nowhere. He claimed anyone passing by would just assume it was a slaughtered animal. The chilling part, the very shoes he used to sweep dirt over the victim's fresh blood, were still laced tightly on his feet. Let's follow them together. Once they arrived at the local Motel 6, he calmly grabbed a washcloth and wiped the remaining evidence off his sneakers. Before checking out, she piled up their messy laundry. She didn't care if the soiled clothes implicated him. She tossed them in a corner, hoping the authorities would inevitably find the undeniable proof. This all happened at that Motel 6. Specifically, the Motel 6 just off Davis Highway, the exact same location where the getaway car was ultimately discovered. The investigator pressed for more details. When they finally checked into that lonely room, what did the two suspects discuss? She insisted she stayed completely silent, paralyzed by pure fear. But the detective knew better. Zach definitely had to have said something to her. She hesitated. Recalling a dark warning, the investigator quickly pushed her to repeat his exact terrifying threat. He ordered her to keep her mouth shut. The secret stays between them, but the crushing guilt was too heavy, and she eventually broke down and confessed everything to a close friend. The detective paused to map things out. He needed a much clearer picture of the actual location. Where exactly was her remote property located? Was it near Pilgrim Trail? The interrogator admitted he wasn't very familiar with that specific area. She explained her house was incredibly hidden. She rarely gave visitors directions because nobody could ever figure out how to navigate those back roads anyway. Sure, she could easily find it while behind the wheel. Instinctively knowing every hidden turn in the dark, the detective dropped the geography lesson. It was time to circle back to the dark motel room. Zach had strictly demanded their absolute silence. He reminded her that if he went down, she went down too. She'd be staring at the exact same prison walls because she was practically his accomplice. What other chilling threats did he make? He bluntly warned her to stay completely quiet, implying he might violently murder her next. He had already used that exact terrifying death threat on an ex-girlfriend before. That previous victim had warned our witness. So when Zach delivered the sinister ultimatum in that motel, she wholeheartedly believed his deadly promise. She defensively claimed she never allowed shady men around her children. They already had a father. She reasoned. She insisted she wasn't reckless. Had she felt even remotely uncomfortable with this brutal killer beforehand, she never would have let him cross her threshold. But Zach never explicitly described how he murdered the innocent victim. She absolutely refused to know the gory details. So, you and I are left wondering when they finally retreated to that Motel 6 room. Did she spot him clutching any hidden murder weapons? Listen to this. Did he usually carry a knife? The witness denied it, claiming they hadn't spent much time together lately since he was locked up in jail. She insisted she barely knew him anymore. Then, the detective pivoted, asking about the shirt Ray was wearing that night. She confirmed Ray wore a red shirt. The investigator pushed for details, asking if it had short or long sleeves. She remembered short sleeves, like a basic t-shirt. The detective pressed on. She added another crucial detail, mentioning it might have had a Nike logo right on the side. Then came a major break. She told police to check the local Motel 6 for a specific towel, the one he used to wipe his bloody shoes clean. The questioning shifted to another person, Lauren, who drove a white Suzuki. Maybe a Mazda or a Suzuki. They clarified the driver's last name was actually Rockwell, not Key. With Lauren Rockwell confirmed, the detective asked if she had her phone number. She agreed, taking a quick second to double-check her phone and hand the number over. This mattered because Lauren was the last person the suspect was seen with. The interrogation circled back to the vehicle. The detective asked her to confirm seeing actual blood over on the driver's side. He asked where else she spotted blood. She admitted seeing it on the driver's door, while the suspect frantically sprayed the entire car down. She wasn't sure exactly how the blood transferred there, whether it came off his clothes or his hands, because she had purposely kept her distance from the mess. The detective asked if he used a specific type of chemical cleaner. She revealed it was a bottle of Lysol. For a long time, he kept that exact cleaning rag and the Lysol spray hidden away. He had stashed them right in the back of Lauren's vehicle. In fact, she admitted that evidence might honestly still be sitting there. When asked if they ever told Lauren about the crime, The witness swore she stayed totally silent, prompting the detective to ask about him. She claimed he never said a word either. The investigator pushed her again, but she swore she kept quiet. However, she noted the suspect, and Lauren hung out alone after dropping her off. Because of that alone time, you and I can only guess what those two discussed. The investigator then asked a chilling question. Did the suspect ever try shoving the victim into the back seat? She didn't think so. The detective then pivoted, asking exactly where her children had been sitting in that car. She replied that both of her kids were in the back seat. He checked her involvement, asking if she remembered getting any blood on herself. Then came a strange detail. He asked if the propane tank was kept in the back seat or the trunk. She explained that when she finally walked outside while he was scrubbing the crime scene, she clearly saw that heavy propane tank sitting right in the back seat. The detective needed more specifics. She recalled it being on the passenger side, specifically tucked away on the rear passenger side. She suddenly remembered another vital clue. While driving down the road, the suspect tossed out a suspicious box right near the end of her driveway. He dumped it right where her mailboxes were. She stumbled over her words, apologizing to the detective for being confusing as she tried to describe pulling out of the driveway right after the incident happened. He reassured her to continue. She explained there was a random box of items sitting on the roadside. She remembered being annoyed, asking him what the junk was and telling him he couldn't just leave his trash laying around. She demanded he pick up his mess. She grabbed the box herself when they reached the driveway. Inside, she found what looked like heavy metal air conditioner vents. Here is the chilling part. She realized thick blood was covering the sides of the box and completely smeared across those metal vents. He just threw them all away. She guessed the evidence was probably still sitting right near the mailbox, or scattered maybe a mile down Highway 97. The detective nodded, shifting focus. The investigator asked who loaded her kids into the vehicle. She confirmed the suspect did. He had physically placed her children inside. The detective asked if the suspect had already wiped off the blood beforehand. She nodded, yes, reiterating that she tried to stay as far away from that gruesome scene as she possibly could. She desperately wanted to avoid seeing any more of the trauma than necessary. Let's unpack this final detail together. The detective asked if the suspect grabbed a weapon from the kitchen right after announcing he would rob Ray. Let's dig into this interrogation. The detective immediately pressed her about the suspect's bag. Did he grab anything from the house? She insisted she never saw him grab a thing. She hadn't been paying close attention to him anyway. And I mean, if a guy plans a robbery, he isn't planning a murder at the very same time. She truly never expected the situation to turn deadly. The detective pushed further. When the suspect first mentioned the robbery, did she actually believe he was going to go through with it? She firmly denied believing his threats, but then she hesitated, mentioning he had told dark stories before. She asked if they shared files with Sousa County, bringing up a random stabbing that had happened out there a few years prior. She couldn't remember the exact road, but the suspect had confessed to her that he did it, and it was featured on an episode of Crime Stoppers. The detective asked if the victim died. She said no. Charges were filed, but the trail had gone totally cold. The police seemingly never figured out who really did it. He had bragged that just 2 hours after stabbing a guy in Milton, his crime was on Crime Stoppers. Yet he never ended up getting caught. The investigator asked exactly which road this crime occurred on. She vaguely recalled it being near the races or the local jail. Taking a brief pause, the detective checked on her condition. He politely offered to get her some more water if she needed it. Then he needed to verify her date of birth again. She rattled off her birth date, then asked for the time. He answered 5:25. Pivoting back, the detective needed to clarify a few more details. He bluntly asked which exact motel room number they had decided to stay in. She had absolutely no idea. She claimed she couldn't remember. Even though she was the one who booked the room, she suggested checking with the front desk, since the reservation was entirely under her own name anyway. Pressing for details, he asked if she could at least remember the specific floor or the side of the building. She recalled it being on the side that faced out toward the local McDonald's restaurant. The detective confirmed the fast food spot Noting the second floor, she remembered their motel room being located somewhere toward the back of the building. She suddenly recalled the suspect getting terrified upon arrival. Right after unloading their car, they spotted a police K-9 unit nearby. Exactly. A cop had driven through the lot, parking at the very end with headlights shining. She assumed the officer was just doing paperwork, but the sudden police presence made the suspect incredibly nervous. It clearly spooked him to the absolute core. The investigator asked if the suspect stayed inside the room with her all night. She confirmed he did, up until he abandoned her the next morning. Upon waking up, the suspect had called a woman named Lauren to come and pick them both up from there. Lauren drove them to the Queen Mary Motel for another room, but they were told they had to be checked out by 11 o'clock the next morning. She tried calling a friend named Jean for housing. While she made the call, the suspect vanished, leaving her totally stranded there. The detective shifted focus back to their movements earlier that day. He asked if her children rode with Lauren. Tracing their steps, he asked exactly where they pulled up at the motel. They quickly clarified it was the Motel 6. She specified it was just the two of them. They had parked up front so she could get out and book the room alone. She recalled the lobby having a security camera right there. Footage like that is crucial. You and I both know that video could be the key to the entire case. After securing the room, the detective asked where they parked the car. She said they parked behind the building. He pressed her for the exact side they eventually chose. She confirmed they parked near the Waffle House. You and I are going to unpack her story. She claimed clothes were left at the Queen Mary. Specifically, a blue collared shirt and the exact outfit she had changed into later that day. She told police that once her accomplice left, she frantically tried calling the front desk, begging them to go check the room and grab their stuff. She insisted they had simply forgotten them. She claimed her baby's clothes and shoes were left inside, but the hotel staff completely ignored her calls and refused to help. She believed the clothes were still shoved underneath the bathroom sink. When investigators asked how long they booked the Queen Mary, she quickly answered just one night. The detectives confirmed that room was booked entirely under her name. Then, the timeline shifted. They eventually moved over to a Motel 6. After parking the vehicle, investigators pressed her for more details. She claimed they headed inside. He carried their bags upstairs first, while she and her young daughter followed closely behind him. The police wanted to know if they ever returned to the car. She stumbled, first blaming him before quickly correcting herself to say she went. She claimed she walked back down the following morning, right after waking up. She said she desperately needed to grab a forgotten box of diapers that was still sitting directly inside their parked vehicle. When asked about their luggage, she played the victim. She insisted she only packed exactly what he ordered her to bring, just diapers and outfits for the kids. She swore she brought absolutely nothing for herself except the clothes she was wearing. He supposedly brought zero clothes for himself, simply barking orders for her to pack for the children. She packed up the kids' bags while he stayed outside, scrubbing down and frantically cleaning the car. She used this as her alibi, claiming she had no idea what happened to the vehicle because she was busy inside. Detectives pointed out that her clothes from the Mercedes drive were still sitting back at the Queen Mary. The very outfit she had stripped off was left behind there. She agreed. Then the police pushed her to recall their exact room number. She quickly guessed 1209. She backtracked, guessing it was either 1206 or 1209, mentioning a friend down the hall she had known for a bit. She claimed their room numbers were similar, so the exact digits were blurry. When police asked if they chose that hotel specifically to meet this friend, she flatly denied it, claiming it was a total coincidence. She swore they only realized the friend was staying there upon arrival. Let's pause and look closer here. The detectives asked if the car had moved from its spot at Motel 6. She insisted it hadn't, and denied ever seeing the keys. She added that right before they left, as she and Lauren were busy, while strapping the kids into their seats, he marched over to the car, grabbing a spray bottle filled with Lysol disinfectant. He also grabbed a rag, and she assumed he wiped the interior down again. She claimed she couldn't see clearly from her angle across the building. She and Lauren were sitting nearby, staring off toward a local McDonald's. While the suspect's car remained parked out of view, he soon returned with the cleaning supplies and a cup for her vehicle. Lauren allegedly never asked any questions about it. At least, not while she was standing there. Then the detective dropped a bombshell. Did she see him toss Ray's red shirt? She panicked, stuttering that she couldn't remember if he chucked it outside, or if he stuffed it into a garbage can once they finally reached the hotel. She felt certain it wasn't left in the vehicle. She guessed he dumped it in a hotel trash can, either inside the room or hidden around back. She insisted she simply couldn't remember, but she clearly recalled him holding the shirt and bringing it into the car. Once they drove off, she claimed its exact whereabouts became a complete mystery. The investigator pressed hard about the trash can, demanding to know what he dumped. She deflected again, offering weak answers, suggesting he might have thrown something away, but refusing to confirm anything solid, denying everything. She finally admitted the red shirt might have been tossed straight out the moving window. She suggested it could be rotting along the roadside, playing the helpless witness. She claimed she wasn't paying attention, just focusing on getting out of there exactly as ordered. Then the detective shifted gears, trying to untangle a confusing detail about text messages to Ray. Who exactly was messaging Ray? "So what do you and I make of this?" she confessed. She sent the message, warning him her kids were awake and he needed to flee immediately. "Let's look at this case." She claimed she stayed inside. She guessed his phone was left outside the vehicle, where he and Zach were sitting together. When investigators pressed her about earlier that day, her memory suddenly got fuzzy. She said they might have texted each other, but she could not recall the details. She did admit he called. Her mother confirmed he rang the house twice. There were 2 missed calls from Ray sitting right there on the caller ID, but she insisted she ignored them. While detectives collected that evidence, the lead investigator shifted the interrogation. He pivoted the focus straight back to the Motel 6. He asked a crucial question: were they together the entire time inside that motel room? Did the suspect ever leave the room alone? Was there a moment he slipped away entirely? She said no. He was terrified of a police cruiser parked near the lot, so he stayed hidden. The detective pushed back, making sure he never left her sight. She confirmed it. Supposedly, he cracked the door open once, spotted the police officer sitting out there in the dark, slammed it shut, and retreated straight back into the room. Then the detective dropped a bomb. He asked about the blood on the suspect's shoes. She agreed. So the detective pressed harder, asking if she saw him scrubbing anything else inside that motel room. Did he try to stash any evidence while hiding there? She claimed she briefly stepped outside that morning to grab a box of baby supplies. The detective quickly jumped on this gap in her timeline to find out what happened. She claimed she had no idea. The interrogator then asked about clothes hidden under a sink. Her excuse was simple. She was just keeping things away from her playful young daughters. She said she opened the cabinet and shoved her clothes next to the laundry detergent. The detective immediately demanded to know what else was stashed down there. She swore that was all. She blamed her toddler's wild behavior, claiming she had to hide practically everything so her kid would not ruin or grab the items. Then she offered up her own shirt, admitting it was layered under a brown one that she had also hidden beneath the bathroom sink at the apartment complex. The detective asked about a white shirt. She nodded. The investigator calmly told her they would be confiscating that piece of evidence too. She did not object. She even pointed out that the suspect forced her to put his worn clothes straight into her washing machine back at her own house. She figured the blood got on her when she walked through the messy crime scene. The detective immediately asked what shoes she wore during that fateful walk. He promised to return her footwear shortly, but insisted on bagging them up for forensic testing. She frantically explained that when they got home, the suspect took her only pair of shoes directly into the bathroom to deal with the messy evidence himself. He washed them clean. She defensively stated she was no criminal. The focus shifted to her parents' house. The detective demanded to know exactly where her parents were while this took place. They were fast asleep. The detective then verified the exact pair of shoes she was currently wearing. She confirmed it, adding her shirt too. She reiterated the hidden evidence. Another shirt sat under the sink at the Queen Mary Apartments, along with his blue shirt and a few of her kids' things. The detective double-checked about his blue shirt. She explained he actually owned 2 blue shirts. The colored one was the piece of clothing stuffed beneath the bathroom sink over at the apartment. As for the second shirt, it was likely still soaking in her mother's washing machine. She assured them it was exactly where the suspect had ordered her to hide it. She then made a startling admission. Her jacket was stained with blood, which she weakly blamed on brushing against a car during the messy ordeal. The detective paused to ask another question. He wanted to know exactly when Zach first brought up the idea of robbing Ray. She explained they were hanging out, and someone had purchased a few beers. According to her, Zach seemed completely fine at the start of the night, but once the alcohol hit his system, his entire demeanor changed, and he started saying some truly dangerous things. Zach was the one running his mouth about pulling a robbery. She claimed she immediately backed away from the plot, reminding him that she actually lived in the area. Did he mention the heist at all after leaving Little Caesars? She swore it never came up. She claimed the whole robbery topic only surfaced because they were arguing about how his reckless behavior constantly made her feel unsafe and on edge. She tried to justify her silence, but the detective stopped her. Stick with me here, because this is exactly where her timeline starts completely falling apart. Let's review this interrogation together. The detective pressed her on why they discussed robbing the victim. She immediately backpedaled. She claimed that she and Zach were merely having a conversation about how Ray's constant staring and inappropriate comments made her feel extremely uneasy and unsafe. And that was when Zach supposedly intervened. She explained that Zach was furious about the things Ray had been saying to her. Once they arrived back at their house, Zach was the one who actually brought up robbing him. The investigator clarified if this conversation happened before Ray arrived. She insisted she pushed back, allegedly telling Zach not to do it because her children were home and Ray was a friend's father. The detective then asked her what Zach specifically instructed her to do next. She claimed Zach ordered her to call the victim and lure him over to the house. The interrogator summarized the motive. Zach wanted to rob him. Then he pressed her on the method, asking if she made a phone call or sent a text message. Suddenly, her memory grew blurry. She wasn't sure if she called or texted, but insisted Zach forced her to play along with a fake story just to lure the victim out. The detective stopped her right there. He demanded to know the exact words Zach used, cutting through her vague excuses. She confessed that Zach wanted the victim's money and ordered her to bring him over. She claimed she was just following orders. The detective caught the implied threat, asking what would happen. She alleged that Zach threatened to hurt her, too. The investigator pressed her to confirm if Zach actually said that, and she eagerly agreed. Deflecting, she brought up an ex-girlfriend, claiming Zach had threatened to kill that woman in the past. The detective shut that down immediately, steering the interrogation firmly back to her and Zach. He forced her to repeat the exact threat. She stated again that Zach promised to physically hurt her. When pressed again on whether she texted or called the victim, her memory failed her. The detective wasn't buying her excuse about just playing along. He demanded to know exactly what her fake story was. She stammered, eventually admitting she was supposed to reach out and convince the victim to come back over to the house and hang out with her. She claimed that when the victim arrived, she actually went inside because her kids woke up, and that's when she told everyone they had to leave. The investigator read a flirty text aloud, asking if she was the one who sent it. She quietly confirmed that she made the move. He needed to know if Zach had used her device to send messages, or if she did all the texting. She claimed she only sent one single text. She downplayed her involvement, claiming she only remembered texting once or twice. The investigator smoothly replied that he was simply trying to piece the timeline together. Stick with me. Her story is about to pivot completely. She nervously mentioned trying to pull up her own phone records, quickly adding that they wouldn't really show much evidence anyway. Instead, she offered up some old Facebook messages from the victim to redirect his focus. She admitted the messages were over a month old and probably useless. The detective took the bait anyway, asking what the victim had been writing to her. Hesitating, she explained that the messages were simply him asking for her phone number. She claimed she willingly handed it over because, up until that specific point in time, the victim had always been polite and had never actually said anything out of line or inappropriate to her. She theorized that the victim eventually got a bit too comfortable around her, simply because she would frequently ask friendly questions about his daughter. The investigator abruptly pivoted, asking if the victim knew Zach was her boyfriend. She denied it. She claimed the victim thought Zach was just a mutual friend. She explained that the victim knew her youngest child's father and naturally assumed she was still dating him while he was serving time in jail. As far as the victim knew, she was already taken. She reiterated that the victim viewed Zach as just a platonic friend. The detective brought up her shocking claim that the victim tried reaching down her pants while Zach was right there in the back seat. He mapped out the scene. She was in the front passenger seat, and the victim was supposedly driving while awkwardly reaching across to grope her. Did Zach intervene at all? Zach stayed silent. When asked how she reacted, she claimed she begged the man to stop. She stressed how uncomfortable she was. The detective cut to the chase. Did the man stop? She said no. She speculated that this specific incident might have been what triggered Zach's deadly anger. The detective pushed her to reveal exactly what happened next. So what do you and I make of this? She ultimately claimed she stayed quiet about the assault because she was terrified. Listen to this. She claimed she was just following orders. Right. She blamed Zach for bringing the victim over, but the detective pushed back. Were you leading Ray on? Her defense was simple. She repeated over and over that she was just doing exactly what she was told. The interrogator wasn't having it. He paused her. She tried dodging, claiming she told him to leave. But the detective cut in the plan was robbery. He asked for the truth. She finally admitted it was Zach's plan. The investigator confirmed her role. She agreed she was supposed to help. But then came the logical question. If she was helping, why did they all drive to the store? They asked where the ambush was supposed to happen. She pointed to the end of her driveway, exactly where it occurred. So, the detective circled back. Why take that drive? She claimed the mastermind, Zach, wanted to hit the local shop to grab something to smoke. So the unsuspecting victim drove him all the way there. Upon their return, she supposedly went inside. She told Zach her kids were awake, claiming she wanted to call off the whole terrible thing. She painted herself as the protector. The detective ignored that, asking what went down during the drive. She said they just chatted like everything was perfectly normal. Just three friends hanging out together. Then she added a detail. She claimed the victim kept reaching over, rubbing her leg, and trying to touch her. She said she begged him to stop, but the detective wasn't having it, telling her she'd have to forgive his bluntness. The investigator admitted he was confused. Just a second ago, he had asked her directly if she was leading the victim on. Back then, she freely admitted it was her job. She said Zach told her to lure the man over and lead him on, promising a smooth robbery where everything would turn out absolutely fine. The interrogator demanded clarity. Were you supposed to lead him on or not? She confirmed those were his exact orders. She claimed she ran inside because she got cold feet. The detective fired back had she promised the victim sex. She strongly denied it. She swore physical intimacy was never discussed at all. According to her, the target kept begging her to step back outside. He wanted to hang out alone, without Zach around. She claimed she refused to be alone with him, allegedly fearing what might happen next. She retreated inside to be with her children. The detective shifted gears. If this was a planned mugging, what weapon was Zach planning to use on the victim? Her defense stayed evasive. She swore he never told her, and she never asked any questions. She played the ignorant pawn, insisting she had no clue whether she was even allowed to ask about the details. She stumbled, but the detective pinned her down. She absolutely knew a robbery was coming. Right, she agreed. Here's where the story fractures. Let's look at this together. The detective pushed her, but she suddenly claimed she didn't believe he'd actually follow through. She swore on her life. She promised she honestly never believed the brutal attack would actually take place. The interrogator wasn't buying her innocence. She still lured him there. She flirted, and she played right along with the scheme. Her excuse, she claimed a sudden weird feeling washed over her, and she decided she wanted no part of the crime. That's when she allegedly retreated indoors. She said she texted the victim, warning him to leave because her kids were awake. She claimed she called Zach inside and confronted him, telling him she was backing out and simply couldn't go through with it. She tried to sound entirely uncertain, wondering out loud if her sudden refusal to participate had made her accomplice angry. She stated that when the victim left, Zach followed. The detective then dropped a new question: did Zach use the victim's phone? She confessed that he did. In fact, Zach had bragged about texting or calling one of his own buddies from the stolen device. When asked who was on the other line, she played dumb. She insisted she didn't know any of his friends. She stalled. The investigator pressed her, "Why do that?" She claimed ignorance. The detective pivoted to a brand new question, highlighting a hole in her story. He asked who actually went inside the store. Reluctantly, she admitted she was the one. He asked what she bought. She claimed nothing, just a bathroom break. She claimed she was entirely broke and didn't even have the cash to buy what her accomplice demanded. So, she allegedly went inside just to fake the purchase, trying to play it off like she bought the goods when she really hadn't. She clung to her excuse. The detective summarized it flatly. She walked in, hit the restroom, and left. She murmured agreement. The detective then asked if anyone questioned her upon returning. "Today, you and I are going to unpack this interrogation." The detective asked if Zach knew she was broke during that store run. Denied. She claimed Zach wanted them at the store just to wait outside. The story was that it kept Ray from feeling uneasy around him. That was her excuse. With Zach waiting outside, she went in alone, leaving the two men out there together by themselves. The interrogator pushed back. Why go inside the store to buy a cigar if she already knew her pockets were completely empty? She admitted she had zero cash. Then the detective asked about marijuana. She played the mother card, swearing she didn't smoke. The detective pointed out the flaw. Why buy a cigar without any weed? She claimed she was just following orders. The cops told her the timeline wasn't adding up. They knew a piece was missing. She panicked, desperately swearing she was telling the absolute truth. She kept promising. They bluntly asked if the robbery was meant to happen before the store. Did the timeline for the crime change? She stammered, claiming she just wasn't really sure anymore. She stumbled over her words again, repeating that the ride was just supposed to make Ray comfortable with Zach. Her twisted logic was that Ray completely trusted her. He didn't know Zach at all, so her presence supposedly kept the victim calm. The investigators needed specifics. Did Zach sneak through the woods, or did he beg for a ride out? She caught herself in a lie. First, it was the woods. Then she scrambled to say the driveway. She backpedaled hard. She admitted her previous story about the woods was false, insisting now that he took the driveway. The detectives caught the discrepancy. Wouldn't Ray have already left by that point? Trapped? She claimed Ray was parked at the end of the driveway, begging to come back inside, while she firmly refused. Then the detectives sprang their trap. Did she offer the couch? She insisted the couch offer was actually for Zach, playing off the illusion that she and Zach were merely friends. Ray had absolutely no idea the two of them were actually a couple. The detective dropped the hammer. Why did the text to Ray's phone offer him the couch? They reminded her they had every single text message extracted. She whimpered, fully aware she was cornered. She panicked, blabbing that Zach warned her this would happen. He knew the police would pull the cell phone data and she would inevitably fall. The investigator demanded her full attention. She just tearfully nodded. They pressed the couch text again. She stubbornly doubled down, completely denying she ever invited Ray back inside to sleep. They asked how that specific message ended up on Ray's phone. Then she nervously claimed the text was meant to tell Zach to use the couch. The cops pointed out the obvious flaw. Why send that to Ray if Zach wasn't with him? Her excuse was a tangled mess. She claimed Zach pretended to be a locked-out neighbor to Ray, trying desperately to maintain their fake platonic relationship cover. She played the friend card, sending a text that read, "Tell Zach you can come sleep on the couch." According to her, Ray kept pushing her to come back outside in the dark, but she firmly refused. The detectives tried to clarify the chaotic timeline. Who was actually supposed to be driving who? They laid out their theory. The texts to Ray were obviously part of the setup. a trick to lure the victim inside to the couch. They asked if that was the grand plan. She frantically backpedaled, claiming this was the exact moment she wanted out. She swore she wanted Zach inside just so she could secretly beg him to call off the impending attack. She claimed she pleaded with him to stop the violent crime. But the detectives sharply noted she was still actively playing the fake neighbor routine. She admitted keeping up the charade, supposedly just to prevent Ray from getting suspicious about the trap. The interrogator went for the throat. She knew a robbery was about to happen. They pressed her on the exact timing. She claimed ignorance on the specific second, but they knew she saw it coming. She finally confessed she knew the attack was inevitable, then immediately started fumbling her words, claiming she was just confused. The detective shut down the confusion. "Stick with me. This is the breaking point." She broke down, sobbing that she was completely terrified of the situation. The investigators took control. They ordered her to take her head out of her hands, sit straight, and face them. "So what do you and I make of this tactic?" They gave her one last chance. Think of her family. Stop lying and just tell the absolute truth. She was stalling. "You and I are watching a suspect scramble." The detective knew Leanne was spinning a version of events that kept her own hands completely clean. He warned her that in an interrogation room, 1,000 honest facts could be entirely shattered by just one single, poorly calculated lie. She just nodded. She claimed she was sharing the details as best as she possibly could, playing the terrified victim. She begged for sympathy, but the relentless detective pushed back. He pressed hard, asking what good it did to offer up the broad strokes of the truth while intentionally hiding the most critical details. It did absolutely nothing to help her case. She was running out of options. It was time for her to finally sit down and act grown. She needed to spill the whole story for her family's sake. The investigator made it crystal clear they weren't leaving that room without a confession today. They demanded she get it right the first time. She offered a weak apology. When asked where her lies actually began, she tried claiming her brain was just completely scattered. She pretended she was merely piecing things together. But the detective cut through her delaying tactics quickly. He told her she knew exactly where she had strayed off the right path, demanding she restart her entire timeline from that specific moment forward. She finally admitted she was told to reach the house so the robbery could happen. Still, her details remained fuzzy. She claimed ignorance, insisting she wasn't sure if the ambush was planned for the getaway drive or if it was supposed to go down right there. She blamed her panic, saying things moved too fast. The detective pushed harder, noting she was dancing on the very edge of a real confession. He urged her to finally spit it out. The narrative shifted as she recalled warning Ray. She corrected earlier statements, confirming that Zach hadn't snuck through the woods, as reported, but actually marched directly up the main gravel driveway. She desperately tried calling the victim's phone over and over. She claimed she never invited Zach over, insisting she wanted to prevent the attack. When the calls went completely unanswered, pure panic set in. Strangely, she reported hearing absolutely no struggle outside. Stick with me. This is where the story gets incredibly dark. She wandered up the driveway and collided with Zach. He was frantically begging her to come down and help him, repeating the plea like a desperate mantra. He repeatedly told her not to freak out, but the very moment they stepped under the light, he revealed hands that were entirely coated in blood. She followed him all the way to the end of that driveway, finding blood everywhere. She froze in absolute shock, utterly unable to process the brutal scene. The detective calmly pushed, asking her what happened next. She retreated toward the house on foot while Zach drove back, but only after he brutally shoved Ray's battered body directly into the trunk. The detective verified if she watched the victim get loaded into the trunk. She confirmed Ray was still alive and making painful noises. She claimed Zach loaded him entirely alone, using her supposed trauma as an excuse for just standing by and watching helplessly. She fiercely maintained that the sheer, overwhelming shock completely paralyzed her from intervening. She fully realized Zach had summoned her up that driveway, specifically to help him manage the incredibly messy aftermath. Despite the massive carnage, she stubbornly denied ever seeing a murder weapon. She saw blood everywhere, but actively avoided looking at Ray's actual injuries when the sharp detective pressed for more details. Acknowledging her squeamishness, the investigator asked again about the bleeding source, but she repeatedly and firmly denied seeing any specific wounds. She simply couldn't stomach looking at the gruesome sight before her. "Let's look closely at this moment." The detective finally cornered her, forcing an admission that she absolutely knew a robbery was happening. She admitted anticipating the theft but desperately backpedaled, swearing she never expected such a brutal escalation. She loudly insisted that she never wanted that extreme violence, yet she still lured the victim right into the trap. She frantically claimed she verbally opposed the plan, trying to convince Zach that she wanted absolutely no part in physically hurting the innocent man. When asked why, she texted the victim to step outside. She smoothly shifted the entire blame squarely onto Zach's direct, controlling orders, a setup exclusively for a robbery. The chilling truth finally settled in when she sent that text. She was fully aware she was serving him up. "Let's unpack this police interrogation together." She claimed she actively tried to prevent the crime. The detectives clearly weren't buying her excuses. They pressed her hard, insisting the victim was lured to the location specifically to be robbed. She swore her accomplice never mentioned murder, but investigators knew Zach had already grabbed a heavy tool, openly threatening to bash the victim's head right in. When pushed on the weapon, she played dumb at first. Eventually, she described a long, heavy air compressor attachment. The cops immediately demanded to know its exact location right then. Her story wavered again, suggesting the ruthless killer might have hidden the bloody evidence or simply tossed it away somewhere. She admitted the murder weapon came from a stash of tools outside her shed, specifically the small storage shed sitting right next to the main house. The timeline was absolutely crucial here. She confessed this deadly preparation happened right before Ray actually arrived. Zach retrieved the heavy weapon, openly stated his violently dark plan, and then Ray finally pulled into the driveway. They rode to the store together, playing along until they returned. While she allegedly hid inside with her kids, the cops listened, knowing they were burning daylight. Investigators pivoted straight to the actual motive. They pointedly asked about Ray's hidden cash. She denied knowing about any money, claiming the two men were absolute strangers. She explained that she only knew the victim casually through a mutual friend. The detectives kept pressing, trying to establish if Ray was known for carrying large amounts of cash. Leanne dodged the question, insisting she never paid attention to anyone's finances or whether Ray usually kept cash on him. She offered vague, dismissive answers, repeatedly claiming she just never really noticed those things. She swore she wasn't the type of person to peek inside another man's wallet. She didn't care, but the relentless police pushed back, asking if the victim had a known local reputation for flashing a lot of cash around. She finally admitted hearing rumors about him owing people cash for shady deals. The intense anxiety clearly made the suspect physically sick. "Stick with me here." The cops asked exactly where they drove next. After locking the brutally injured man in the dark trunk, she revealed they actually pulled through Thompson Park on their dark detour. They didn't stop. They just aimlessly drove through at her accomplice's quiet instruction. The detective carefully confirmed this disturbing timeline. After that dark detour, they finally headed straight over to a Motel 6. Then, the interrogation suddenly shifted to an uncomfortable topic. Investigators needed to know the actual true endgame. What was the original plan after pulling off the initial robbery? They asked if murder was always the goal, or if this started as a simple mugging gone terribly wrong. She panicked, telling the cops they needed to ask Zach those tough questions. Her fragile nerves completely unraveled. The detective calmly offered her a plastic bucket if she truly needed to throw up right there, promising her she would absolutely feel better afterward. The detective ruthlessly circled right back to their original plan. She desperately claimed Zach originally just intended to use the injured victim's phone to quickly call someone. The supposed master plan was simply to knock Ray out cold, and then just leave him bleeding in the driveway. What were they going to do next? Zach was supposed to grab her and the innocent kids, then flee straight to a hotel room. But things escalated way too fast. The detective pressed for specifics, asking exactly which hotel they planned to target. She nervously claimed they hadn't actually picked one out yet, but they definitely weren't staying at the house. So the terrible goal was a quick assault and an immediate escape. Then, the focused detective sharply shifted his gears. He asked if she was busy packing her children's bags while the attack unfolded. She firmly denied being involved, heavily insisting she only packed her children's bags after Zach drove the victim's car back up the driveway, signaling the brutal, bloody deed was finally done. You and I are seeing a cover-up. Let's break down this interrogation together. The detective pushes hard. I think you're making this a bigger deal, worrying about absolutely nothing. You knew it would happen. He presses. She deflects instantly. I didn't know it would happen exactly like that. He traps her. You didn't know the victim would be killed, but you knew a robbery was planned. Exactly, she admits, scrambling to backtrack. But I didn't want that. I told him to just come inside. Is that your 100% truth? He asks. Absolutely, she promises. She plays the sympathy card. That is someone's father. I don't know what I would do if someone robbed or killed mine. Both of them? She stammers out. The detective cuts through her act. Yeah, but let's take the killing completely out of the equation. You planned a robbery, not a murder, right? He asks. She agrees, claiming she had a bad feeling and tried backing out completely. But he corners her again. You knew it was happening. I thought saying something might stop the whole thing. She claims defensively, but my words simply did not work. The detective isn't buying it. You knew the second he walked up that driveway. The crime was officially in motion. Sort of. She mutters back. But not like that. I was totally confused about what I was supposed to do. All right. Lean back. Yes, sir. Do me a favor. He says, we're almost done. Just sit up straight for me. I feel like I might throw up, she whispers. He backs up just a touch to give space. In January 2015, Zachary Greer was convicted of first-degree murder and handed a permanent life sentence. As for Deborah Burge, she pleaded no contest to second-degree murder. She got 15 years in Florida State Prison in 2015. Now, in 2026, Greer remains locked up for life. But what do you and I make of Burge? She finished her sentence early and walks free. Sometimes, the greatest tragedies in life do not begin with violence. They begin with selfishness, dishonesty, and silence. The story above is a painful reminder that when people allow greed, anger, or fear to control their hearts, innocent lives are always the ones that suffer most. What makes this story truly heartbreaking is not only the crime itself, but the betrayal behind it. Families were destroyed. Children lost their sense of safety. Parents watched their loved ones collapse emotionally. One selfish decision created a chain reaction of pain that could never fully be repaired. But hidden inside this darkness is an important lesson for all of us. Every choice matters. A moment of honesty can prevent years of regret. Asking for help is always stronger than hiding toxic emotions. And no amount of money, revenge, or temporary comfort is ever worth another human life. Life will sometimes test us with stress, broken relationships, or emotional pain. Yet true strength is choosing compassion instead of cruelty, truth instead of manipulation, and responsibility instead of escape. In the end, love, trust, and integrity are the only things that truly protect a family. Once those are destroyed, no apology can fully erase the damage left behind.